Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to share this one with you today. We're going to be unpacking a classic, deeply fascinating parable all about human attachment, love, and what it actually takes to find lasting peace. Now, on the surface, this might just read like a tragic fable, but as we're going to see, it's actually a razor-sharp diagnosis of the human mind. So get comfortable, and let's unravel the tale of the king and the handmaiden.
But before we get into the story itself, I want you to consider this. Can getting exactly what you want actually be the sickness? I know, it sounds entirely backward, right? We literally spend our whole lives chasing things. People, status, material wealth, always thinking that once we finally attain them, we're going to be cured of our dissatisfaction. But what if the very thing you're desperately longing for is the exact thing keeping you unwell? Just keep that provocative thought in the back of your mind, because this seemingly simple fairy tale is about to completely challenge our entire understanding of worldly desires.
Okay, let's dive into this. The story kicks off with a really rapid, dramatic shift. We start with this incredibly wealthy, powerful king. One day, he's just walking down the street, encounters a handmaiden, and falls instantly, deeply in love with her. And because he has unlimited resources, he just acquires her and brings her into his lavish palace. Happily ever after, right? Well, actually, no. Shortly after arriving, the handmaiden falls into this mysterious, wasting illness. The king immediately brings in all his court physicians. These are the absolute best experts in the land, but they're completely baffled. They failed to cure her, and eventually they just have to admit total helplessness. Realizing that literally all the medicine and money in the world cannot fix this, the king hits rock bottom. He turns to prayer in a state of absolute, total surrender. And it's in that state of deep surrender that the king has a dream. A holy man, a divine physician, appears to him and reveals the true diagnosis. And guys, this is the major turning point of our story. The handmaiden's sickness isn't physical at all. It's not a virus or some disease of the body. She is actually suffering from an intense, all-consuming longing for a goldsmith she was forced to leave behind in her hometown. So the mystery is solved. It's a sickness of the heart. It's an obsessive attachment to someone she left behind. So the king wakes up and he acts. In an act of profound self-sacrifice, literally giving up his own romantic desires just for her well-being, he tracks down this goldsmith and brings him to the palace. He gives her exactly what she wants. But here is where the story takes a harsh, highly unconventional turn. That divine physician from the king's dream, he arrives in person. And he knows something the king doesn't. He knows the handmaiden's attachment to this goldsmith is really an idol, and it's actively preventing her spiritual maturation. So what does he do? He secretly gives the goldsmith a potion. Now, this potion doesn't kill him, but it causes his physical beauty to slowly, inevitably wither away. And as the goldsmith loses his charm and his physical appeal, the handmaiden realizes her love was entirely superficial all along. Her obsession fades, and finally, she finds inner peace.
And this, right here, illustrates the true genius of the source material. On the surface, yeah, we have a mildly tragic fairy tale, but underneath, it is a profound psychological allegory for the human condition. It's a highly structured blueprint of our own minds, our own sufferings, and our own paths to genuine peace. Every single element of this story was a symbol.
What's really fascinating is how perfectly the whole story maps to our own minds. Each of the four main characters we just met perfectly embodies an abstract aspect of our own internal struggles. We're going to walk through each of these right now because this is where the explainer gets incredibly personal.
Let's start with the king. The king represents the human intellect. Think about the king in the story for a second. He's powerful, he's wealthy, he can summon the greatest doctors, and solve almost any logistical problem you throw at him. But when it comes to the mysterious illness of the handmaiden, he's entirely helpless. Well, our intellect is exactly like this. It possesses immense power to navigate the physical world, build careers, solve complex problems, but it fundamentally lacks the vision to understand the soul's true nature. When we feel deeply unfulfilled or spiritually sick, our intellect tries to solve it with logic or resources, and honestly, it almost always fails.
Let's move to the handmaiden and see how this builds. She represents the human soul. Why is she sick the second she arrives in the palace, even though she has every physical comfort she could ever need? It's because she represents our soul, which is fundamentally homesick due to its separation from its divine origin. The soul in this physical world feels a deep, inherent longing, and because it feels this aching emptiness, it desperately searches for anything to fill the void.
Which leads us directly to the object of her obsession. So the crucial point is that the goldsmith represents worldly desires. He represents the false idols we mistakenly believe are the ultimate source of our happiness. The handmaiden thought the goldsmith would cure her, just like we think a new promotion, a certain relationship, or hitting a specific financial goal will cure our internal emptiness. We project our soul's longing for the divine onto temporary, physical things. We obsess over these transient goldsmiths, thinking they're the cure, when in reality, they're the very idols preventing us from actually healing.
And finally, the divine physician. This character symbolizes spiritual guidance, or an enlightened consciousness. Notice how the physician only shows up after the king. The intellect completely surrenders and admits defeat. When our logic hits a brick wall, spiritual insight steps in. The enlightened consciousness recognizes exactly what the intellect cannot, that our suffering doesn't actually come from a lack of physical things, but from misplaced attachments. The physician knew that just handing the handmaiden her worldly desire wouldn't cure her soul. It would literally just deepen her illusion.
So how does enlightened consciousness actually cure the soul? Well, the source material reveals a specific three-step process. Step 1, you have to witness the transient nature of the world. That is exactly why the physician had to poison the goldsmith. It seems cruel at first, sure, but it was necessary medicine. By making the goldsmith's beauty wither away, he forced the handmaiden to see that physical things just do not last. They decay, they change. Step 2, once you see that transience, you can naturally let go of those misplaced attachments. The obsession just fades on its own. And step 3, with the false idol finally out of the way, the soul is free to turn toward the true beloved, its actual divine origin, and find lasting inner peace.
This brings us to a truth that perfectly encapsulates everything we've talked about today. The cure is not in gaining what we crave, but in witnessing the transient nature of the world, which allows us to let go and turn toward the true beloved. This is absolutely crucial, and it's why this explainer matters so much for our own lives. We spend so much energy trying to gain what we crave, just assuming that getting our desires is the cure for our pain. But the source material completely flips the script on us. True healing only comes when we realize the things we crave are temporary, which then allows us to finally release our grip on them.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly important question to ask ourselves. Who or what is the goldsmith in your own life? What is that worldly desire, that temporary thing that you've convinced yourself will permanently fix your internal dissatisfaction? Is it a job title? Is it a person? A financial milestone? Remember the lesson of the handmaiden. As long as you are intensely longing for that temporary goldsmith, your soul is going to remain restless. True peace isn't found by bringing the goldsmith into the palace. It's found by recognizing that his beauty will fade, letting go of the attachment, and turning your gaze back to what is eternal. Really think about that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I can't wait to dive into our next topic together.